Emily Carter always believed that the happiest moments in life arrived quietly. Not with fireworks, not with dramatic speeches, just with the people you loved standing close enough to remind you that everything was finally okay. That Saturday afternoon in early May felt exactly like that. The backyard of their beautiful suburban home outside Charlotte, North Carolina, had been transformed into a dream. White balloons floated gently in the warm breeze. Soft music played beneath strings of glowing lights. Fresh flowers covered every table. A large sign near the entrance read, "Welcome, Baby Carter." Emily smiled every time she looked at it. After 3 heartbreaking miscarriages over the last 5 years, she was finally 32 weeks pregnant. Every kick from the little boy growing inside her reminded her that miracles sometimes arrived after unimaginable pain. Her husband, Ethan Carter, seemed just as excited. He greeted guests with a confident smile. He hugged relatives. He laughed with co-workers. Everyone admired him. Successful attorney, loving husband, soon-to-be father. At least, that's what everyone believed. Emily watched him from across the yard and couldn't help smiling. She remembered the first time they met 6 years earlier in downtown Charlotte. He had accidentally spilled coffee on her laptop. He apologized so sincerely that she ended up having dinner with him that same evening. One dinner became dozens, then an engagement, then marriage, now a baby. She often told herself that every painful chapter in her life had been worth surviving because it eventually led her to Ethan. If only she had known. Some stories begin with love. Others begin with lies disguised as love. Emily's best friend, Samantha Brooks, adjusted a ribbon on one of the gift tables. "You deserve today," Samantha said warmly. "I still can't believe you're finally going to be a mom." Emily laughed. "I don't think it's real yet." "It will be," Samantha smiled, "when that little boy starts crying at 3 a.m. They both laughed. Nearby, Ethan's mother, Linda Carter, was speaking loudly to a group of guests. Linda had never truly accepted Emily. She believed Ethan should have married someone wealthier, someone from their social circle, someone with a more impressive family name. Although Linda smiled in public, every compliment carried hidden poison. Emily had learned to ignore it. Today wasn't about Linda. Today was about their son. Or so she thought. The party was everything Emily had imagined. Friends shared stories. Family members guessed the baby's birthday. Children played games on the lawn. Professional photographers captured every smile. One of Ethan's law partners even joked, "Ethan, you'll finally have someone who listens to you." Everyone laughed, even Emily. Everything looked perfect. Too perfect. Inside the house, Ethan slipped away for just a moment. No one noticed, except Samantha. She saw him walk quickly upstairs while glancing over his shoulder. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Curious, Samantha stepped inside to look for him. As she reached the hallway, she heard Ethan speaking quietly behind the closed office door. "No, not today." Silence. Then another voice, a woman. Very calm, very familiar. Samantha couldn't hear every word, only fragments. She still doesn't know. After the DNA results, everything changes. Samantha froze. DNA? Results? She leaned closer. The floor creaked beneath her feet. Inside the office, the conversation stopped immediately. The door opened. Ethan stepped out with his usual confident smile. "Samantha." "You scared me." She forced a laugh. "Oh, sorry." I was looking for Emily. She's outside, he smiled. I'll be there in a minute. His expression never changed, but something in his eyes did. For the first time, Samantha felt afraid of him. Outside, Emily was opening gifts: tiny baby clothes, stuffed animals, books, blankets. Every gift made her emotional. Then the host announced another surprise. Ladies and gentlemen, we have one final activity before cake. Everyone gathered around. A young woman wearing a medical company badge walked toward the stage carrying a sealed white envelope. Emily looked confused. Ethan suddenly became unusually tense. The woman smiled politely. Mrs. Carter? Several weeks ago, you requested early genetic screening through our family package. Emily nodded. Yes. The results arrived yesterday. We were asked to deliver them personally. Emily looked at Ethan. I thought you already picked them up. For the first time all afternoon, his some smile disappeared. The guests laughed softly. Most assumed it was simply another exciting pregnancy update. Someone shouted, "Open it!" Another guest clapped. Emily smiled nervously. She opened the envelope, pulled out the report. Her eyes moved across the page. At first, she didn't understand what she was reading. Then she saw one sentence highlighted in bold. The tested male is excluded as the biological father, with a probability exceeding 99.99%. Emily stopped breathing. The paper slipped from her hands. The backyard fell completely silent. Every eye turned toward Ethan. His face had gone pale. But before anyone could speak, a voice from the back of the crowd broke the silence. That's impossible. Because Ethan already knew the results 3 weeks ago. For several seconds, no one moved. No one even breathed. The backyard, which only moments earlier had been filled with laughter and music, had become eerily silent. Emily's trembling fingers clutched the edge of the gift table to keep herself from collapsing. Her heart pounded so hard she could barely hear anything else. The DNA report lay on the grass near her feet. Ethan didn't even try to pick it up. Instead, he stared toward the back of the crowd. The woman who had spoken stepped forward. She looked to be in her early 40s, dressed in a navy blazer with a hospital identification badge clipped to her jacket. Emily had never seen her before. The woman took a deep breath. My name is Dr. Rebecca Collins, she said calmly. I'm the director of the genetics department at Charlotte Memorial Medical Center. Confused whispers spread through the guests. Emily frowned. Why would you say my husband already knew? Rebecca looked directly at Ethan. Because he came to my office 3 weeks ago. Emily slowly turned toward her husband. Ethan? What is she talking about? He forced a nervous smile. She's mistaken. Rebecca shook her head. No, I'm not. I remember every patient involved in a prenatal paternity dispute. Another wave of murmurs swept across the backyard. Linda Carter immediately stood. This is outrageous! My son would never, Rebecca interrupted politely. I'm not accusing anyone. I'm stating documented facts. Emily's knees felt weak. She had always trusted facts. Facts couldn't lie. People could. Ethan suddenly stepped forward. Rebecca, I think you violated patient confidentiality. The doctor looked almost disappointed. No. The only confidential information belongs to Mrs. Carter. And she's finally hearing it. Emily couldn't understand what was happening. Her thoughts raced in every direction. Why would Ethan secretly visit the genetics department? Why hadn't he told her? Why had he pretended this envelope was a surprise? None of it made sense. Unless he already knew something she didn't. Samantha quietly walked beside Emily. "You don't have to stand. Let's sit down." Emily shook her head. "No. I need answers." She looked directly into Ethan's eyes. "Were you there?" 3 long seconds passed. Then, yes. The single word felt like a knife. "You lied." I didn't know how to explain." Emily felt tears burning her eyes. "So instead, you smiled. You invited everyone. You let me open that envelope in front of our entire family. I thought..." "You thought what?" "That humiliating me in front of everyone would somehow hurt less." The guests remained frozen. No one wanted to leave. No one wanted to interrupt. This had become something no one could look away from. One of Ethan's law partners quietly whispered, "We should probably go." But nobody moved. Even the photographer had lowered his camera. Rebecca bent down and picked up the report from the grass. She looked at Emily. "I don't believe these results are correct." Emily blinked. "What?" Rebecca nodded. "I've believed that since the moment I reviewed them." Now everyone looked confused again. Ethan's face lost what little colour remained. "What are you saying?" Rebecca pulled another folder from her briefcase. The DNA sample submitted under Mr. Ethan Carter's name was compromised. Emily stared at her. "I don't understand." Rebecca continued. "The laboratory received 2 male DNA samples. One belonged to your husband. The other belonged to someone else." The crowd erupted with whispers. Emily looked from Rebecca to Ethan, then back again. "Someone switched the samples?" Rebecca nodded slowly. "Exactly." Emily suddenly felt hope. Maybe this was all some terrible mistake. Maybe Ethan wasn't lying. Maybe someone had sabotaged the test. She looked toward her husband, hoping to see relief on his face. Instead, he looked terrified. Not confused, not angry. Terrified. Rebecca noticed it too. She folded her arms. "That's the reaction I've been waiting to see." Linda rushed toward her son. "Ethan, tell them! Tell them this woman is lying!" Ethan swallowed hard. But no words came out. Rebecca quietly reached into her folder again. "This is why I came today." She removed several printed security photographs. "I requested access to the hospital surveillance footage." Emily took the pictures with shaking hands. The first showed Ethan entering the genetics department. The second showed him leaving a consultation room. The third made Emily's blood run cold. It clearly showed Ethan handing a thick white envelope to a laboratory technician in the parking garage. The technician accepted it, then looked around nervously before slipping it inside his jacket. Emily whispered, "No." Rebecca spoke softly. That technician resigned the next morning and disappeared. The silence became unbearable. Emily slowly looked back at Ethan. "Did you bribe someone?" His lips trembled. "I can explain." Emily laughed, not because anything was funny, because her heart had reached the point where it no longer knew how to react. "Explain. You let me believe our baby wasn't yours. You let everyone here think I cheated. You watched me break apart, and you said nothing." Ethan finally shouted, "I was protecting us!" Emily stared at him. "Protecting us from what?" He closed his eyes. "You wouldn't understand." Rebecca answered instead. "Oh, I think she deserves to." Emily frowned. "What do you mean?" Rebecca hesitated for only a moment, then she looked directly at Emily. The paternity test was never the secret Ethan was trying to hide. Emily's breathing stopped. Rebecca continued quietly. He was trying to hide that another DNA test had been performed. Emily whispered, "Another test?" Rebecca nodded. "One that had nothing to do with your baby." At that exact moment, a black SUV pulled into the driveway. 2 men in dark suits stepped out. Behind them, a grey-haired gentleman carrying a leather briefcase slowly approached the backyard. Rebecca looked at him and sighed with relief. "He's here." Emily frowned. "Who is he?" The elderly man stopped only a few feet away. He looked directly at Ethan, then said 5 words that made Ethan visibly shake. "Mr. Carter, the FBI would like a word." The backyard had become so quiet that Emily could hear the wind moving through the oak trees. Nobody cared about the balloons anymore. Nobody looked at the cake. Every guest was staring at the 2 men in dark suits standing beside the elderly gentleman. The older man opened a leather folder and removed a gold badge. "Special Agent Michael Harris," he said calmly. "Federal Bureau of Investigation." A ripple of nervous whispers spread across the crowd. Emily's stomach tightened. This couldn't be real. Just 20 minutes ago they had been celebrating the upcoming birth of their son. Now, the FBI was standing in her backyard. Agent Harris looked directly at Ethan. "Mr. Carter, we'd appreciate a private conversation." Ethan forced a smile. "There must be some misunderstanding." "We're in the middle of a family event." Harris didn't smile back. "We know exactly where we are. And we've waited for this day." Emily blinked. "Waited?" The agent turned toward her. "I'm sorry you're finding out this way, Mrs. Carter." Her heart sank. "You knew?" "We've been investigating your husband for nearly 11 months. Emily felt as though the ground disappeared beneath her feet. 11 months, almost her entire pregnancy. Linda Carter stepped between the agents and her son. "My son is a respected attorney. You have no right to embarrass him like this." Agent Harris remained calm. "Mrs. Carter, we're not here because he's a lawyer. We're here because we believe he used his law firm to commit multiple federal crimes." Gasps echoed around the yard. One of Ethan's law partners quietly backed away. Another lowered his head. Emily noticed. Why weren't they surprised? Harris continued. "Money laundering, identity fraud, forgery, wire fraud, obstruction of justice." Each accusation felt heavier than the last. Emily stared at Ethan. "Tell me he's lying." Ethan looked away. That was all the answer she needed. Samantha gently took Emily's hand. "I'm so sorry." Emily whispered, "How long have you known?" Samantha's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't. I only suspected something after what I heard upstairs. Emily nodded slowly. At least one person hadn't betrayed her. Agent Harris turned another page inside his file. Mrs. Carter? There's something else. Emily almost laughed. There couldn't possibly be anything worse. I don't think I can hear any more. I wish that were true. The agent handed her several photographs. She looked down. The first showed Ethan entering a downtown bank late at night. The second showed him meeting an unfamiliar woman. The third made Emily freeze. It showed Ethan holding hands with a little girl. The child looked about 6 years old. She was smiling up at him, like she knew him, like she loved him. Emily whispered, "Whose child is that?" Nobody answered. She looked at Ethan. His silence said everything. A heavy silence settled over the backyard. For the first time that afternoon, even Agent Harris looked uncertain. If Ethan hadn't ordered someone to clear out his office, then who had? And more importantly, why? Ethan stared at the FBI agents. "I didn't touch my office." "You have to believe me." Emily almost laughed. After everything she'd learnt that day, belief no longer existed. "You've lied to me for 6 years. Why would anyone believe you now?" Ethan lowered his head. "I deserve that." "But I'm telling the truth." Agent Harris spoke into his radio. "Lock down every exit. No one leaves." Within minutes, 2 additional FBI vehicles pulled into the neighborhood. The guests, who had planned to spend the afternoon celebrating a baby shower, now found themselves in the middle of a federal investigation. Phones came out, people whispered. Some quietly started recording. Samantha walked over to Emily. "You should go inside." Emily shook her head. "No. I'm done hiding. If my life is falling apart, I'm going to watch every piece of it." Agent Harris turned to Ethan. "Who had access to your office?" "My assistant. My law partners. The cleaning company. And..." He stopped. "And who?" "My office manager." "What is his name?" "Daniel Pierce." One of the agents immediately typed the name into his tablet. After only a few seconds, his expression changed. "Sir?" "What?" "Daniel Pierce boarded a private flight to the Cayman Islands 3 hours ago." The backyard exploded with shocked whispers. Emily frowned. "Who is Daniel?" Ethan rubbed his forehead. "He handled all the firm's finances." "You trusted him?" "I trusted him with everything." Agent Harris looked directly at Ethan. "That was your first mistake." The younger agent interrupted again. "We've just received another report." "What is it?" "The security cameras inside the office were disabled using Ethan Carter's own access code." Harris looked at Ethan. "Care to explain that?" "I can't. Because I never gave anyone my code." Emily suddenly remembered something. 3 weeks earlier, she had walked into Ethan's home office late one evening. He had been furious, not angry, terrified. The moment she entered, he slammed his laptop shut. When she asked what was wrong, he smiled and said, "Just a difficult client." At the time, she believed him. Now, every memory felt different. Rebecca quietly approached Emily. "Can I ask you something?" Emily nodded. "Did Ethan ever seem afraid recently?" Emily thought for a moment. "Yes. He stopped sleeping." He changed all of his passwords. He installed security cameras around our house. And Rebecca waited. He kept asking strange questions. What kind of questions? What would happen if someone stole another person's identity? Rebecca's face became serious. Meanwhile, another black SUV entered the driveway. This one wasn't marked FBI. A tall woman stepped out wearing an elegant grey suit. She looked confident, powerful, and strangely familiar. Emily narrowed her eyes. Then she realized who it was. Victoria. Victoria Langford, the billionaire CEO. The woman Ethan had secretly had a child with. The entire crowd turned toward her. She walked straight past everyone, ignoring Ethan completely. Instead, she stopped in front of Emily. For several seconds, neither woman spoke. Then Victoria surprised everyone. She reached out and gently took Emily's hand. "I'm sorry." Emily pulled her hand away. "Sorry? You destroyed my marriage." Victoria slowly shook her head. "No, I didn't." Emily frowned. "What does that mean?" Victoria looked directly into her eyes. "Ethan lied to you." "But he lied to me too." The backyard became silent once again. Victoria continued. "I didn't know he was married." Emily blinked. "What?" "When we met, he told me he was single." "He said he was building his own law practice." "He said he wanted a family." Emily looked toward Ethan. His face was pale. Victoria continued quietly. "I found out the truth when I was already 4 months pregnant." Emily whispered, "So you left him?" Victoria nodded. "I never spoke to him again." Agent Harris stepped closer. "Mrs. Langford has been cooperating with the FBI for over 5 years." Emily looked confused. "So, she's not under investigation?" "No. She's one of our key witnesses." Victoria sighed. "I spent years believing Ethan only lied to me. But I eventually learned I wasn't the only woman." Emily felt another chill run through her body. "How many?" Victoria hesitated, then answered softly, "You're number 4. Emily's world stopped. 4? There had been 4 wives, or 4 serious relationships. Agent Harris opened another folder. "We've identified 4 women. Each believed she was Ethan's only partner. Each trusted him with finances. And each one lost everything." Emily whispered, "He stole from them." The agent nodded. "Millions." Emily's voice trembled. "My savings. My retirement account. The investment fund Ethan convinced me to open." Agent Harris looked at her with sympathy. "We believe those funds no longer exist." Emily felt the blood drain from her face. Not only had he stolen her heart, he had stolen her future. Just then, a police officer hurried toward Agent Harris. "Sir, we found something." "What?" "A hidden safe." "Where?" "In the garage." Emily looked confused. "There isn't a safe in our garage." "There is now." The officer placed a heavy black lockbox on the table. It was hidden behind the drywall. Everyone stared. Agent Harris looked at Ethan. "Would you like to open it?" Ethan slowly shook his head. "I've never seen that before." The FBI used a small cutting tool to break the lock. Inside, there wasn't cash, there wasn't jewelry, there wasn't a weapon. Instead, there were dozens of passports. Each carried Ethan's photograph, but every passport had a different name. Ethan Carter, Michael Reed, David Collins, Christopher Hale, Andrew Stone. Emily gasped. This can't be real. Victoria closed her eyes. It is. Agent Harris carefully lifted the final document from the box. Unlike the others, this one wasn't a passport. It was a birth certificate. The name on it wasn't Ethan Carter. It read, Jonathan Miles Walker. Agent Harris looked directly at Ethan, then quietly said, So, that's who you really are. Ethan closed his eyes. For the first time that day, he stopped pretending, and in a barely audible voice he admitted, Ethan Carter died 22 years ago. I've been living as him ever since. No one spoke. Even the FBI agents seemed stunned by what they had just heard. Emily stared at the man she had called her husband for 6 years. She no longer knew who he was, or if she had ever known him at all. What did you just say? She whispered. The man she knew as Ethan Carter slowly raised his head. My name isn't Ethan. It's Jonathan. Jonathan Miles Walker. Emily felt the air leave her lungs. So, everything was fake? Our marriage? Our home? Our life? Jonathan closed his eyes. No. My name was fake. My feelings for you weren't. Emily laughed bitterly. You expect me to believe that now? He didn't answer, because there was no answer that could erase 6 years of lies. Agent Harris stepped forward. Jonathan Walker, you've been running for 22 years. Jonathan nodded. I know. It's over. Harris frowned. Then start talking. Jonathan looked at Emily. I owe her the truth. He took a slow breath. I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. My father was a violent alcoholic. My mother died when I was 14. I spent years living on the streets. No family, no future, no one. Emily listened in silence. She wanted to hate him, but she also wanted to understand how someone became capable of living such a massive lie. When I was 20, Jonathan continued, I met Ethan Carter. The real Ethan. He saved my life. Emily looked up. What do you mean? Jonathan's eyes filled with regret. We worked construction together. He was my best friend. We were like brothers. The backyard was completely silent. One of the FBI agents quietly started recording the confession. Jonathan continued. One night, we were driving back from a job site during a thunderstorm. The roads were flooded. A truck crossed the center line. Emily held her breath. There was an accident. The car rolled into a river. I survived. Ethan didn't. Tears formed in Jonathan's eyes. I tried to save him. I couldn't. Emily whispered, So you stole his identity? Jonathan nodded slowly. At first, it wasn't planned. There were mistakes in the accident report. The bodies weren't identified immediately. My wallet had washed away. Ethan still had his. I made one terrible decision. I told them I was Ethan. Agent Harris interrupted. And then you kept lying. Jonathan looked down. One lie became another. I thought I'd change my name later. I never did. But that's not all, is it? Harris asked. Jonathan remained silent. The agent placed another file on the table. We know about the investment fraud. We know about the shell companies. We know about the offshore accounts. Jonathan nodded. I know you do. Emily stared at him. So, you really stole people's money? Jonathan looked at her. Not at the beginning. What changed? His answer surprised everyone. Greed. I realized people trusted lawyers. They trusted successful men. They trusted confidence. I built the life I'd always wanted. A house, luxury cars, business clients. And eventually, I convinced myself I devoted it. Emily's tears rolled silently down her face. So everything I believed in was built on stolen money? Jonathan couldn't deny it. Yes. Agent Harris looked at his team. Bring him in. 2 agents stepped toward Jonathan. He didn't resist. He held out his wrists. The handcuffs clicked shut. Linda Carter burst into tears. No, no, my son. Jonathan looked at her sadly. I'm not your son. Linda froze. Everyone turned toward her. What did you say? Emily asked. Jonathan looked directly at Linda. You've known for years. Emily slowly looked at her former mother-in-law. Linda's face turned white. I can explain. Agent Harris raised an eyebrow. I think you'd better. Emily's heart pounded. Linda, you knew? Linda broke down crying. I found out after the wedding. Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. You knew I married a man using another person's identity. And you said nothing. Linda covered her face. He begged me. He promised he'd changed. He promised he'd never hurt you. Jonathan quietly said, I meant it. Emily looked at him with disbelief. You promised not to hurt me, while stealing my entire future. Rebecca suddenly interrupted. Wait. Everyone looked at her. She had been reading through one of the files recovered from the hidden safe. Her expression changed. Michael, you need to see this. Agent Harris walked over. What is it? Rebecca handed him an old photograph. In the picture, the real Ethan Carter stood beside a smiling elderly man outside a large estate. Emily frowned. Who's that? Harris answered immediately. William Carter. The real Ethan's grandfather. Emily recognized the name. William Carter had once been one of North Carolina's wealthiest real estate developers. He had died years ago, leaving behind a fortune rumored to be worth over $180 million. Rebecca turned another page. There was a trust that belonged only to Ethan Carter. Emily looked at Jonathan. Is that why you kept his identity? Jonathan didn't answer. That silence was enough. Harris finished the sentence for him. You didn't steal a name. You stole an inheritance. Jonathan slowly lowered his head. Yes. The guests gasped. For 22 years, Everything had been leading to one goal: the Carter fortune. Before anyone could ask another question, one of the FBI agents answered his phone. His face immediately changed. He looked at Harris. "Sir, what now?" "We've got a problem." "What happened?" "The federal evidence vault in Raleigh has just been broken into." Harris frowned. "That's impossible." The agent swallowed hard. The only files that were stolen were the original records from the Carter identity case. Emily looked toward Jonathan. He seemed just as shocked as everyone else. Harris narrowed his eyes. If Jonathan is already in handcuffs, then who just stole 22-year-old evidence? The answer terrified everyone, because it meant only one thing. Jonathan Walker hadn't been working alone. The backyard fell silent once again. Jonathan Walker was already in handcuffs. 2 FBI agents stood on either side of him, yet someone had just broken into a secured federal evidence vault and stolen only one file: the original Carter identity case. Agent Harris slowly lowered his phone. "This changes everything." Emily looked at him. "What does that mean?" Harris answered honestly. "It means Jonathan wasn't the mastermind. He was only one piece of a much larger operation." Jonathan immediately looked up. "No, that's impossible." Harris frowned. "You seem surprised." "Because I am." Jonathan's voice trembled. "I worked alone. I've never had a partner." The agent stared at him for several seconds. "I believed that until 5 minutes ago." One of the FBI's cybercrime analysts hurried into the backyard carrying a laptop. "Sir, we've recovered security footage from the federal building." "Show me." Everyone gathered around the screen. The surveillance video showed a person entering the evidence archive 20 minutes earlier. The individual wore a dark hood and gloves. Their face was hidden. They walked directly to one cabinet, unlocked it without hesitation, removed a single evidence box, ignored everything else, then diapers. Emily whispered, "They knew exactly where it was." Harris nodded. Only someone familiar with the investigation could have done that. Rebecca folded her arms. "So we have a leak." "Inside the FBI?" "No." Harris shook his head. "Not necessarily. There are fewer than 20 people outside the Bureau who knew where those files were stored." Emily asked, "Who?" "Federal prosecutors, retired investigators, and..." He stopped. "And?" "The Carter family attorney." Jonathan's expression changed instantly. "No." Harris noticed. "You recognize the name?" Jonathan slowly nodded. "I haven't heard it in years." Emily frowned. "Who?" Jonathan whispered, "Richard Holloway." The name meant nothing to Emily, but it clearly meant something to Harris. He immediately called another agent. "Pull every file on Richard Holloway." The response came less than a minute later. "Sir, Richard Holloway died 8 years ago." Jonathan closed his eyes. "No, he didn't." Everyone looked at him. "I attended his funeral." Jonathan shook his head. "There wasn't a body. He told me that if anyone ever announced his death, it meant he wanted to disappear." Emily stared at Jonathan. "Who is he?" Jonathan took a long breath. "The smartest man I've ever met. He handled the Carter family's legal affairs. He knew every trust, every investment, every secret. He also knew that I wasn't Ethan." The backyard exploded with shocked whispers. Emily couldn't believe what she was hearing. "You told him?" Jonathan nodded. "I didn't have a choice." 22 years earlier. Jonathan's voice grew quieter as he remembered. "I had just assumed Ethan's identity. I didn't know anything about law. I didn't know anything about the Carter family. I needed help. So I went to Richard." Emily interrupted. "And instead of reporting you, he made me an offer." "What kind of offer?" Jonathan looked ashamed. "He said, 'I'll protect your secret if you help me steal something much bigger.'" Agent Harris clenched his jaw. "The Carter Trust." Jonathan nodded. Richard had discovered a hidden clause in William Carter's estate. If Ethan Carter disappeared without being legally declared dead, the inheritance would remain frozen. No one could touch it. Not the government, not distant relatives, not creditors. Jonathan became the perfect solution. As long as the world believed he was Ethan Carter, the fortune remained accessible. Emily whispered, "So you were never the mastermind?" Jonathan slowly shook his head. "I was the face. He controlled everything." Emily remembered something. The investments, the shell companies, the offshore accounts. Jonathan finished her sentence. Were all Richard's idea. At that exact moment, a black sedan stopped outside the house. An elderly man stepped out wearing a tailored charcoal suit. Silver hair, perfect posture, a polished cane. He walked calmly toward the backyard. Jonathan's face turned white. "No. It can't be." Emily turned. The man smiled politely. "Good afternoon." Agent Harris immediately drew his weapon. "Stop where you are!" Instead of stopping, the man slowly raised both hands. "My name is Richard Holloway." The entire crowd gasped. He wasn't dead. He had been alive all along. Richard smiled as though he had arrived at a garden party instead of a federal arrest scene. "I've been watching this investigation for months." Agent Harris shouted, "Don't move!" Richard chuckled. "You've always been impatient, Michael." Emily realized something. "You know each other?" Harris's expression darkened. "He trained me." The revelation stunned everyone. Richard Holloway hadn't just been the Carter family lawyer. He had once been a federal prosecutor before entering private practice. He knew exactly how investigations worked, exactly how evidence was stored, exactly how to stay one step ahead. Richard looked toward Jonathan. "You disappointed me." Jonathan's voice cracked. "I trusted you." Richard laughed softly. "No, Jonathan. You trusted the version of me that made you rich." Emily stepped forward. "You destroyed our lives." Richard calmly met her eyes. "No. I merely gave people opportunities. What they chose to do with them was their decision." Emily had never heard anyone justify evil so casually. Agent Harris signaled the tactical team. "Arrest him!" 2 agents advanced. Richard didn't resist. Instead, he reached into his coat pocket. Every weapon in the backyard was instantly aimed at him. "Hands where I can see them!" Richard slowly removed. Not a gun, not a knife, a sealed manila envelope. He held it toward Emily. "This belongs to you." Emily hesitated. "What is it?" Richard smiled. "The one truth Jonathan never knew." Agent Harris carefully took the envelope, opened it, and pulled out a single legal document. His eyes widened. He looked at Emily, then at Jonathan. Finally, he whispered, "This changes everything." Emily's heart pounded. "What is it?" Harris swallowed. "It's the original birth record of your unborn son." Emily frowned. "I don't understand." Harris looked at the document one more time, then uttered the sentence that left everyone speechless. "Emily, Jonathan Walker isn't your baby's biological father either." Emily stared at Agent Harris. The envelope felt heavier than anything she had ever held. Her hands trembled as she unfolded the final document. It wasn't another DNA report. It wasn't another lie. It was a certified laboratory report issued 3 weeks earlier. Rebecca smiled softly. "I've been waiting all day to show you the real results." Emily looked at the first page. Her eyes immediately found the words she'd been desperate to see. Probability of paternity, 99.9998%. Jonathan Walker, the man she had known as Ethan Carter, was indeed the biological father of her unborn son. Tears streamed down Emily's face. For the first time that day, they weren't tears of fear. They were tears of relief. Her son had never been the mystery. The lies had Rebecca continued. The report shown during the baby shower was fake. The laboratory technician accepted a bribe to replace the original results. But before he disappeared, he secretly emailed me the authentic report. Emily looked at Jonathan. "You were willing to let the whole world believe I cheated?" Jonathan couldn't look her in the eyes. "I thought, if you believed the baby wasn't mine, you would leave before the FBI destroyed your life too." Emily stared at him in disbelief. "So your way of protecting me was humiliating me in front of everyone I love?" Jonathan whispered, "I know I don't deserve forgiveness." "No, you don't." Agent Harris closed the investigation folder. "Jonathan Walker, you are under arrest for identity theft, wire fraud, money laundering, conspiracy, and obstruction of justice." Jonathan nodded quietly. "I understand." As the agents escorted him toward the FBI vehicle, he stopped one last time. He turned to Emily. "I did love you." Emily looked at him with calm eyes. "The man I loved never existed." Jonathan lowered his head. Without another word, he got into the vehicle. The door closed, and 6 years of lies drove away. 3 months later, Emily gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She named him Noah. Not because Jonathan had chosen the name, but because the name meant new beginning. She wanted her son to grow up knowing that he would never carry the weight of another person's lies. Only the truth. The federal investigation lasted nearly 2 years. Richard Holloway was convicted on multiple federal charges. He was sentenced to life in federal prison without the possibility of parole. Jonathan Walker accepted a plea agreement. The judge considered his confession and cooperation. Even so, he received 32 years in federal prison. The laboratory technician who altered the DNA results was arrested 6 weeks later while attempting to cross the Canadian border. Victoria Langford recovered nearly $140 million in stolen assets. The remaining money was returned to dozens of victims who had lost their life savings. One rainy afternoon, Emily visited the Carter Cemetery. For the first time, she stood before the grave of the real Ethan Carter, a man she had never met, a man whose identity had been stolen for more than 20 years. She placed white lilies beside the headstone. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I'm sorry someone stole your name. And I'm sorry it took so long for the truth to find its way home. The wind gently moved through the trees. For the first time in years, Emily felt at peace. A year later, Emily had rebuilt her life. She started a non-profit organization that helped victims of financial fraud rebuild their futures. Rebecca Collins joined the board as a medical advisor. Victoria Langford became its largest donor. The three women, once connected only by one man's deception, became close friends. Not because of what had happened to them, but because of what they chose to become afterward. On Noah's first birthday, Emily looked around the backyard. Children were laughing, music played softly, family and friends filled the garden. It looked almost identical to the baby shower where everything had fallen apart. But this time, there were no lies, no secrets, no fear. Only truth, only love, only hope. Emily picked up Noah and smiled. My sweet boy, the greatest gift I can ever give you is a life built on honesty. She kissed his forehead. The camera slowly pulled back. The laughter grew louder. And for the first time, the future felt brighter than the past.